Ask her about the rain. Ask her about the night we met. Ask her what you told me on the rooftop. The words you said you had never spoken to anyone before. Rafe turned slowly from the altar and looked at the woman standing before him. Then he looked back at the bride beside him. Two identical faces, two identical voices, but only one heart that had ever truly loved him. Ask her what you call me when we are alone. Silence swallowed the entire ballroom. 300 guests held their breath. The bride at the altar opened her mouth, but nothing came out, not a single word, because she did not know the answer. She never could. But how did we get here? How did a woman end up locked in a room on her own wedding day while her twin sister walked down the aisle wearing her name, her dress, and her future? Let me take you back to the beginning. They say every child is born screaming, demanding to be heard. I think I was born apologizing. My mother, a woman I would never get the chance to know, carried 2 daughters inside her for 9 months. On the night we arrived, her body gave everything it had, and then gave more. My sister Daria came first. She entered the world wailing, gripping life with both fists, as if she already knew it belonged to her. I came second, silent, still. The doctors worked on me for 3 agonizing minutes before I took my first breath. By the time air filled my lungs, our mother had already closed her eyes for the last time. My father, Victor Petrescu, was a man built from iron and old money. He had turned a single rusted cargo vessel into a fleet of 42 ships. He commanded boardrooms the way generals command battlefields. But my mother had been his only softness. She was the single crack in his granite exterior where tenderness got through. When she died, that crack sealed shut forever, and all the darkness he carried had nowhere to go except toward me. He could not look at my face without seeing her death. I remember the first time he said it to me. I was 6 years old. I had wandered into his study looking for a crayon. He was sitting behind his desk, a glass of whiskey in his hand, and when he saw me standing in the doorway, his expression did not change. There was no anger. There was something far worse. It was indifference, laced with blame. You took her from me. His voice was flat, factual, like he was reading numbers off a shipping report. Daddy, I was just looking for a crayon. Get out. From that day forward, the house became 2 worlds under one roof. Daria was his jewel, his princess, his first daughter, even though we shared the same womb and were separated by only 11 minutes. She wore imported lace. I wore hand-me-downs from the housekeeper's children. She ate at the dining table. I ate in the kitchen, standing, because sitting at the counter felt like too much privilege. She had a bedroom with a balcony that overlooked the harbor, the ships catching golden light every evening. I had a narrow cot in the room beside the laundry, where the walls trembled every time the machines ran, and the smell of detergent seeped into my skin so deep I carried it everywhere like a second identity. And the worst part, the part that still makes my chest ache when I think about it, is that I loved Daria anyway. She was my sister, my twin, the other half of me. When we were very small, before she learned the hierarchy our father had built between us, she would sneak into my room at night and hold my hand while I cried. Do not be sad, Lena. When we grow up, I will share everything with you. Her voice was so sincere. I believed her with every fiber of my small, desperate heart. But children become what they are taught. And our father taught her she was gold, and I was the dirt beneath it. By the time we were teenagers, Daria had mastered a kind of cruelty that wore a smile. The kind that could be laughed off if anyone questioned it. The kind that left no bruises on the outside, but shattered everything within. One afternoon, she called me from her bedroom. Lena, bring refreshments to the veranda. My friends are waiting. I carried the tray out. 4 or 5 daughters of wealthy families sat with their legs crossed, their sunglasses gleaming, their laughter sharp like breaking glass. They looked at me the way you look at furniture you did not pick out yourself. One of them tilted her head and squinted. Wait, you 2 are twins. You are joking. This one looks like she works here. The laughter that followed was the kind that enters your bloodstream and stays there. Daria did not defend me. She offered a small, embarrassed smile, the kind a person gives when they are apologizing for a stain on the carpet. Daddy says she is the responsible one. More laughter. I stood there holding the tray, my jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached, and I said nothing. I had learned by then that silence was my armor. Words only gave them something else to mock. But inside, Inside, I was keeping score, not for revenge, for survival. I was memorizing every moment that tried to break me so that one day, when I finally stood on my own 2 feet, I would know exactly how far I had climbed. I worked constantly. I cleaned the house before sunrise. I cooked meals that I was rarely invited to eat. I ironed my father's shirts with the kind of precision that bordered on prayer, because a single wrinkle could earn me an hour-long lecture on my uselessness. And through all of it, I kept going to school, not the private academy where Daria was enrolled. Our father would never spend that kind of money on me. I attended the overcrowded public university across the city, studying business administration with textbooks I could barely afford and a hunger in my chest that had nothing to do with the meals I skipped. One evening, I came home late from my shift at the restaurant where I waited tables. My father was in his chair. The television was off. The house was quiet in that dangerous way that always meant a storm was coming. "Where have you been?" "Work, Daddy, work." He spat the word like it tasted sour. "Useless work. Wash these clothes. And where is my money?" Before I could answer, Daria appeared at the top of the stairs. "Daddy, I saw Lena near your room earlier." My blood went cold. I did not take anything. I was just passing through the hallway. My father stood. His shadow stretched across the floor like a verdict. "Liar. Thief. After killing your mother, now you want to finish me too." "I swear, Daddy." I did not take it. He raised his hand. I flinched. He did not strike me that night, but the threat lived in the air between us like something breathing. Later, alone in my small room, I sat on my cot and stared at the ceiling. Is it a crime to be born? Even my own father hates me. I clasped my hands together and whispered to a woman I had never met, "Mama, if you can see me, please tell Daddy I did not kill you." The night I met Rafe Almeida, I was 23 years old, soaking wet, and carrying a bag of onions. It was one of those vicious coastal storms that turns the streets into rivers and makes the sky feel personal. Like the clouds are angry at you specifically. I had just finished my shift. My manager had paid me in cash, and I had immediately spent half on groceries for the house, because even though my father could afford a private chef, feeding the household had somehow fallen to me. I was walking the 12 blocks home because I did not have bus fare. The bag tore. The onions rolled across the pavement like small, mocking planets. I knelt in the rain to collect them, and that is when I saw her, an old woman sitting on a bench outside the closed pharmacy, shivering, her thin shawl soaked through, her eyes darting around with confusion, as if the world had become a language she could no longer read. I forgot the onions entirely. Ma'am, are you all right?" She grabbed my hand with surprising strength. "I cannot find my way home. I came out for my medicine, and now the streets all look the same." I sat beside her. I held her hand. I did not care that the rain was turning cold or that my groceries were floating into the gutter. This woman was somebody's mother, somebody's grandmother, and she was lost and scared and alone. I knew exactly what that felt like. "It is okay. We will figure this out together." That is when the black car pulled up. The window came down, and a voice, deep and edged with urgency, called out, "Grandmother, grandmother." He stepped out of the car like a man arriving from a different world. Tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than I would earn in a year. His eyes were fixed entirely on the old woman, and he did not seem to notice the rain destroying his clothes. She was confused. I was just sitting with her until someone came. He looked at me then, really looked, and something shifted behind his eyes. Not recognition. We had never met. Something else. Something I did not have a name for yet. "You are soaked. So are you." His grandmother squeezed my hand tighter. This girl, Rafe, this girl sat with me in the rain. She did not have to. He held my gaze for a long, strange moment. Rain hammered the pavement between us, and then he smiled. Not a polished, practiced smile, a real one. Disarmed, almost bewildered, as if he had just found something he did not know he was looking for. "Thank you. Genuinely. It was nothing. It was not nothing." I did not know that night that Rafe Almeida was the sole heir to the Almeida Maritime Corporation. I did not know his face had graced the covers of business magazines, or that his net worth was counted in figures I could not even imagine. All I knew was that 3 days later, he walked into the restaurant where I worked. He sat at a corner table, ordered sparkling water, and waited until my shift ended. "I wanted to see you again," Why? The question seemed to genuinely confuse him. I have been trying to figure that out for 3 days. We talked for 2 hours that night. I told him about my studies, how I was finishing my final year, how I wanted to build something of my own someday, something no one could take from me. I did not tell him about my father, not yet. He told me about his grandmother, how she had raised him after his parents died in an accident, how she was the only person in his life who saw him as more than a number on a balance sheet. His voice softened when he spoke about her, and I recognized that softness immediately. It was the voice of someone who understood that love is not a transaction. It is a gift you cannot earn and do not deserve and receive anyway. You remind me of her, your grandmother, the way you sat with her in the rain, with nothing to gain. That is rare, Lena, rarer than you think. When he said my name, it sounded different than it ever had. It sounded like it belonged to someone who mattered. Over the months that followed, Rafe became the first beautiful thing in my life that was not taken from me. We met after my shifts. We walked the harbor at sunset, his company's massive ships silhouetted against the orange sky. He never asked me to be anything other than what I was. He never made me feel small. And slowly, carefully, the way you open a door you are terrified might lead somewhere wonderful, I let him in. I told him everything. My mother, my father, Daria, the laundry room, the handouts I could not afford, the years I spent believing I was fundamentally unworthy of love. He did not try to fix it. He did not pity me. He just sat with it all, the way I had sat with his grandmother in the rain. You are extraordinary, and anyone who made you believe otherwise was lying. The night he proposed, we were standing on the rooftop of his grandmother's building. The city spread beneath us like a circuit board of light. A butterfly landed on my shoulder, just resting there in the warm dark, and he stared at it with wonder. Even nature knows you are something worth landing on. I laughed. He dropped to one knee. I do not have anything to offer you, Rafe. You have everything I have ever wanted. He slid the ring onto my finger, and I cried, not from sadness, from the terrifying, overwhelming realization that maybe God had not forgotten me after all. When Rafe came to my father's house to formally ask for my hand, I should have known what would happen. My father opened the door. He looked at the car in the driveway, a machine worth more than our entire home, and I watched something ignite behind his eyes. Not love, not pride, calculation. I am here for Lena, sir. I would like to ask for her hand in marriage. My father's gaze swept from Rafe to the car, from the car to Daria, who had appeared at the top of the staircase in a silk dress, her hair cascading over her shoulders, looking every inch the polished daughter he had invested in. My daughter, yes, of course. Daddy. He came for me. I stepped forward. His hand caught my arm. He pulled me into the hallway, out of Rafe's sight, and his voice dropped to a hiss that I will hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. You think I will let you, the one who killed my wife, marry into billions? You think you deserve this? He chose me, Daddy. Then he chose wrong. He locked me in the storage room beneath the stairs. I heard him return to the foyer with warmth in his voice I had never once experienced. Forgive my daughter. She was freshening up. Darling, come and greet your fiancé. I heard Daria's heels on the marble floor. I heard her voice, my voice, the voice that sounded almost identical to mine. Rafe, I have missed you. I screamed. I pounded on that door until my fists bled. But the walls of that house were thick, built to contain empires and secrets. No one came. The weeks that followed were torture wrapped in silk. They planned my wedding while I remained confined. My father told Rafe that Lena was overwhelmed with preparations and needed privacy before the ceremony. Daria studied me like a script. She asked me questions about Rafe, his favorite restaurant, the story of how we met, the words he used when he proposed. I refused to answer. She took my phone and extracted them herself. She learned to be me the way an actress learns a role. And Rafe, brilliant and powerful as he was, could not have anticipated the one deception no amount of intelligence could detect. An identical face, but a face is not a soul. I heard him once through the wall during a visit. She seems different, quieter. My father's voice, smooth as oil, pre-wedding nerves. All brides get them. And then came the wedding day. They moved me to a room on the second floor of the Grand Astoria, the hotel where my ceremony was being held. The lock turned from the outside, and the sound of it, that cold final click, was the loneliest thing I had ever heard. Through the walls, I heard the string quartet begin to play, 300 guests settling into their chairs, white roses and candlelight, and Daria, wrapped in the Italian lace gown Rafe had chosen for me, walking toward the altar. I pounded on the door. I screamed his name until my voice broke, and then I stopped. I stopped crying. I stopped begging. I stopped being the girl who apologized for existing. I looked around the room. There was a window. It overlooked the courtyard, 2 stories up, an impossible drop. But beside the window, there was a narrow maintenance ledge running along the building toward the fire escape. I thought about my mother, the woman who gave her life so I could have mine. She did not die, so I could rot behind a locked door while someone stole my future. I climbed out the window. The wind caught my hair. The ledge was barely a foot wide. Below me, the courtyard yawned open. One wrong step, and I would fall. I did not fall. I reached the fire escape. I descended. I entered the hotel through a service entrance, and I ran, barefoot, wild-eyed, breathing like something untamed, through the kitchen, past the stunned catering staff, through the double doors, and into the ballroom. The string quartet stopped. 300 heads turned. Daria was standing at the altar, her hand in Rafe's. She saw me, and her face went white. My father, seated in the front row, rose to his feet, his expression a thunderstorm. Rafe, my voice was raw, barely a whisper. But in the silence of that ballroom, it carried like a church bell. He turned, and for a moment, he looked from me to Daria and back again. Confusion flooded his face. 2 identical women, 2 mirrors facing each other. How do you tell the difference between a woman and her reflection? Rafe, ask her about the rain. Ask her about the night we met. Ask her what your grandmother said. Ask her what you told me on the rooftop. The words you said you had never spoken to anyone before. Daria's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Ask her what you call me when we are alone. Rafe turned to Daria. His voice trembled. What do I call you when it is just us? The silence that followed was louder than any scream. Daria looked at our father. She looked at me, and in her silence, the truth detonated. Mariposa. I said it softly. Butterfly. Because the night he proposed, a butterfly had landed on my shoulder in the dark, and he had said it was a sign that even nature recognized I was something worth landing on, a word so private, so sacred, that no stolen phone could have revealed it, because he had whispered it only once, and only to me. Rafe's eyes filled with tears. He dropped Daria's hand as though it had burned him. He crossed the ballroom floor in 5 strides. When he reached me, barefoot and trembling and raw, he took my face in his hands and looked at me with an expression that unraveled every wound my father had ever inflicted. There you are, my father shouted. Daria collapsed at the altar. Guests erupted into chaos, but I heard none of it, because Rafe was holding me, and for the first time in 23 years, the girl who was blamed for being born was finally being chosen. We did not marry that day. The wreckage of what had almost happened needed time to settle, but 3 months later, on a quiet Tuesday morning when the sea barely whispered, we stood on his grandmother's rooftop and exchanged vows in front of 12 people who truly loved us. His grandmother wept. She held my hands afterward and said something I will carry with me forever. He found you because you were worth finding. My father never came. He called once, weeks later, not to apologize but to inform me I was no longer his daughter. I held the phone, waiting for devastation to hit. It did not come. You cannot lose what you never had. Daria sent a letter on pale blue stationery. Her handwriting was small and careful. I am sorry. I was afraid that if I did not take what was offered to you, I would never get anything of my own. I know that is not an excuse. It was not, but it was honest. And from her, honesty was a kind of beginning. I wrote back one line. You were always enough without taking what was mine. I built my business, a small consultancy helping women from difficult backgrounds access education and employment. It is not an empire. It is not a fleet of ships. It is a room with a desk and a phone and a door that is always, always unlocked, because no one should ever be trapped again. Some nights, Rafe finds me on the rooftop staring at the city lights, and he does not ask what I'm thinking. He just stands beside me, close enough that our arms touch, and waits. Thank you. For what? For asking her about the rain. He smiles. That same smile from the night we met. Disarmed. Real. I would have known. Even without the question. I would have known. How? Because when I look at you, Lena, the whole world makes sense. And when I looked at her, it did not. The wind carries the sound of the harbor. Ships arriving. Ships departing. The endless rhythm of things leaving and returning. I lean into him. I close my eyes. And for the first time in my life, I am exactly where I belong.